What's the most terrible thing you've ever done?
Had sex with a hooker, then shot her in the back of the head. 3 years ago, I was going through a nasty divorce. I decided to try an online dating site for a random hookup just to get it out of my system. After a few weeks, I get a hit from a 19-year-old girl. Now I am in my 30s, but I am not about to turn down a chance at 19-year-old pussy. Fast forward a week or two of talking, and I have learned that she lives in a town about an hour away. I also learned she has extremely low self-esteem and is supposedly a virgin. Now the icing on the cake is she looks a great deal like my soon-to-be ex-wife and had a similar name. Now I am normally a really nice guy, but I am going through the most mentally and emotionally stressful time of my life, and I decide I am going to use this girl as a plaything. Fast forward another week, and I have this girl convinced that I like her and she is ready to have her cherry popped. I meet her at a theater in her town, we catch a flick, eat lunch, and I drive her an hour back to my place. In the time we have been talking about her losing her virginity to me, I tell her I like it rough and I want to say and do some pretty harsh things with her. She passively agrees to everything, very obviously eager for just the attention. A few hours later, I have popped her cherry, introduced her to anal and oral, and have come in her without protection twice. Did some light bondage and S&M. She is pretty quiet afterwards, obviously having not enjoyed most of it. She decides she wants to spend the night and we fuck a couple more times, again unprotected. Now here is where I become even more of a bastard. As my divorce was near to being final, I had made arrangements to move to a new apartment and I was dropping the phone service that we jointly held and getting a new number. This becomes relevant shortly. Now at no point had I told her my real name. I used a nickname from my childhood and never mentioned my last name. Silly girl never asked either. To add to it, when I took her to my place, I took a convoluted and non-direct route on back roads to get her there and a completely different route at night to get her back home. Fast forward a week. I have not replied to any of her further texts, and even if she got a ride, she couldn't find me because I now moved and she didn't know my real name. I put her out of my mind and enjoyed my memory of popping a 19-year-old's cherry and basically ruining her. The icing on the cake. I logged back into the online dating site a few weeks later and found multiple messages from her culminating in she had missed her period and tested positive on a pregnancy test.
Dated someone online via instant messaging, told her I tried to kill myself and had amnesia, told her it was her fault, and then fucked with her emotions as she tried win me back. Man, I feel like a dick just thinking about it, but I also feel like telling a short story. This was before the days of MySpace and Facebook and whatever. Essentially, I started dating a girl halfway across the country that I met in some chat room, however we only communicated via instant messaging. Anyway, she would show me her poetry on whatever primitive blog was around at the time and send me pictures of herself, and this goes on for a month or two rather smoothly. However, I began to assume, correctly, that these pictures of her were actually of her friend, which I had seen thanks to a link on her blog. Not to be duped any longer by this lying female, I plotted my escape the best way I knew how. I tried to kill myself. At least, that's what my mom told her. I posed as my mom, if that's not clear. I told her I was going to live, but she wouldn't be talking to me ever again because I gave myself amnesia or some bullshit. I block her screen name and go on with my days. About 2 weeks later she IMs me from a new screen name. OMG, are you okay? Fuck. So now I go back to being my mom and have to tell her that I'm still recovering and go into a tirade about how I left notes mentioning her and that it's all her fault. She apologizes profusely, but I lay into her with all the hurtful things my 14-year-old brain can come up with. She calls me a bitch and tells me I don't understand true love, and I block her again. Another month goes by and she IMs me from a new screen name again. This time I don't act like my mom, but instead I'm a new me with no memory of the past or her. To make a long story short, this leads to her trying to make me remember how much I loved her for the next few months. I dismiss her as a crazy person and continually block her new screen names as she pleads with me, baby, just try to remember us. Sometimes I'd have breakthroughs only to relapse the next time I talked to her and generally just amused myself knowing I was ripping her heart out little by little. Eventually I had enough of playing cat and mouse with her and changed my screen name. I sometimes wonder what I could have done differently, that is, to fuck with her more. But I think I did enough damage.
I broke into an old man's home with an axe. Pissed and shat in his toolshed, destroyed his wheelbarrows, burned his lawn and got away with it. About a year ago, me and a couple of guys went camping, drinking ourselves to death in a tent somewhere far away, to celebrate our friend's birthday. None of us could have predicted what would happen. We drove around for a while to find a suitable place to put up our tents. This all happened in Iceland, and for those who don't know Iceland, I should tell you that outside the capital Reykjavik there are only tiny villages and thousands of square kilometers of cold empty deserts and wastelands, along with a shitload of abandoned farms. It's desolate, but beautiful. Anyways, we find this old abandoned farm near a beautiful grassy hill in a deep fjord and we decide to camp there. We get the party started, get really drunk, and naturally our behavior is altered to say the least. There may have been some illegal substances involved. Now, you all know that shit-faced people do stupid things, and this was one of those times. We found an old tool shed of some sort and since there were no toilets around, we decided to use the tool shed as a toilet. By the end of the night, the tool shed was full of shit and piss. We found wheelbarrows which we destroyed and used as a fireplace where we built a huge campfire. The fire got bigger than we planned and actually destroyed a part of the field we were camped on. For some reason, one of us had a huge firefighting axe, don't ask. We decided to use it to break into the old farm since it's obviously abandoned, it's in pretty bad shape and it was no one's property anymore. Breaking into abandoned farms is a hobby of some sort in Iceland, and not considered a serious crime, so this is quite common and normal. We break down the front door with our huge axe and go inside. Once we're inside we see beds with clean sheets, a TV that's turned on, and a fridge full of fresh salmon. The only thing we could think of was shit fuck. We accidentally broke into some poor bastard's home. We had obviously failed to see the difference between an abandoned farm and an actual unabandoned home. But being drunk, we didn't care. A few hours later, the homeowner, a really old man, comes home only to find his home broken into by some drunk idiots, his front door ruined with an axe, some tents and a ton of trash in his backyard, his tool shed ruined by piss and shit, and his wheelbarrows and lawn destroyed by fire. Of course, he was devastated and called the police, which came to arrest and interrogate us. But here's the most horrible part, we actually managed to convince the homeowner and the police that the whole thing wasn't our fault, that actually some other guys had been there before and they probably did it. We were just passing by and decided to stop to clean up the place out of goodwill. We drove away as free men. No fines, no charges. We are such bastards.